Hello, legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast, episode 296. Exactly 296 days since this blog and podcast started, and is going every single day since for that amount of days. The videos came much later. This is video update number 74, I believe. So as you can see, there's a quite discrepancy in terms of that. But blog and podcast is alive and going for 296 days straight. Yesterday, I hope I gave you enough value to educate um, your mind and life a bit more towards the awareness of tics. I'm not sure how much you took out of it, and if you only watched the podcast or actually read the blog, I highly recommend going to the blog post and reading it. Today, I'll add a bit more information into the blog post, but the video itself won't be about tics too much. It will be just a short update of today and not much beyond that. I'll probably create a longer video tomorrow because yesterday I almost fit within I almost created half an hour video. It was 29 minutes or so. So, it's a little bit of a late hour at the moment. We are 23:12, which is 11 p.m., 11:12 p.m. And I want to make sure that not only I will create or kind of record this update today, but also I'll manage to upload it on time, embed it into the blog post, and publish the blog post before midnight. If you are new to the blog and podcast, let me just quickly explain. I started that in 2022 as a means for my own accountability to create some form of routine and keep it going every single day. For some people, these are simple routines like a wake up or things like that around the same time, reading, exercise, things like that. I tried different of those in the past, and they didn't work. And they didn't work not because they don't work, of course, they work for other people, but they didn't work because I didn't work. And very popular word describing it is procrastination, but I learned along the way that yes, I can be dedicated to things and do things with passion and they work well, but if I try to force habits or routines that are not aligned with what I want to do at specific time of day or every day, then they quickly fade away. And this is what happened to many things in my life, but I wanted to change it, and I really still am wanting to change it and be more structured. And this blog and podcast are start to it. So my idea was to create something that I call core routine, something that happens very regularly. So I chose every day, and for every day it's very hard to write a blog post every day about something really, researched, concise, long story around that. It's very difficult to do that. So it was a challenge, but I wasn't writing it initially. So the idea was to write it for myself. And along the way, when I build something over time, it will be a valuable historical, I would say, resource for people that struggle to start like I did. So the goal was to create that as a value for other people like you, my readers and listeners and watchers. But the initial small goal and actual purpose was to become accountable to myself and create something and start doing something that will last longer than, let's say, 30, 40 days, like other things did in my life. And I thought about writing because I like to write sometimes, or I really like to write something more extensive, or, taking notes was something that I really liked. And decided that instead of forcing myself to do a long blog posts every day and try to research the topics, which would take me the whole day to research for another day. That wouldn't make sense unless I lived from it and didn't have work or other kind of duties at home. So I thought about just starting with anything. So whatever came to my mind, I decided to create the first post and write a couple of lines. And this is what I did. If you go back to day one, you will see how cringe and simple, basic, almost banal it was. And immediately after, I got suggestion from WordPress integration with Spotify for podcasters. At the time, it was called Anchor platform, but it's now Spotify podcasts. That I can convert that blog post into audio. And I thought, why convert if I can just record it with my own voice? I don't want it to sound too artificial because some AI will read it, and decided to record it myself. And it took off. Every single day I was writing a blog post and reading it myself. After some time, it felt robotic. I spoke about it many times in different episodes. I wanted to change something, and it took it took 200 days for me to change it because I was very hesitant to change the format of the audio or podcast, which was basically reading like an audiobook, whatever I wrote. And the tipping point was not only the number 200, the milestone of 200 days, but also the fact that at that day I spoke to a friend of mine, Carlos, and who suggested to do that change independently from my thoughts. And it basically was the moment where I that puzzled together, and I said, if externals are saying that it feels too robotic to read the blog post so mechanically and not add any thoughts or don't do it in a more loose and flexible way, then that means if it aligns with what I think, that must be true. So I tested that, and here we are. 296 days, but 96, 97 days of new format, which is that kind of podcast where I speak freely, I share my thoughts, and they are not necessarily exactly aligned, and they are not reflection of what is in the post that day. They are related very often, but both blog and podcast are supplementing each other. So for a full experience, it's better to watch and read the blog to get the full update for that day from my side. Of course, not everyone have enough time, so reading the blog post probably is the shortest. But for people that don't like to read, they can watch or listen, depending if they prefer using podcast and audio only or video, which is on YouTube and Spotify video as well. So that's a quick summary of my story. We are almost 10 minutes in, so what I'll do is I'll just quickly summarize, as I always do, because this blog and podcast is a journal effectively. So I always add update from what happened today. So the Tuesday, which we are now, was the second day of Julian's summer camp, soccer summer camp. My wife dropped him into the pitch, and he thoroughly enjoyed the second day. It was quite. We were quite skeptical because it was rainy later during the night and in the morning, so we thought that it might be a bad weather, but it turned out very well for them, and they enjoyed a nice, warm, and sunny day at Drumbar. It's 3 hours per day, so they have plenty of time to play together. And this is a proper soccer camp organized by FAI, which is Football Association for Ireland. So it's a formal, well organized event. From my side, it was quite a busy day from two sides. One is obviously work, and second is the private elements of the day, which are focused now on trying to get and complete the purchase of the house if possible. If not, well, what can we do? But we are in a good spot in a good spot to go through that process, and we started it. So maybe in a couple of weeks the environment might change, and if it is, I'll definitely start working on some green screen and getting a little bit more and better quality for this podcast. The highlight of the day was the evening walk with my wife. I thought about taking her to Loch Eske, but instead we drove all the way to Ardnamona Woods, which is very close. It's actually very close to Loch Eske, but it's a different forest, and we just did a loop there, but the loop was very short. It was about 2.5 kilometers if you go from the car park, do the loop, and go back to the car park. So we continued up to the Harvey's Point and back, which ended with about 6.2 kilometers, which was a nice evening walk. It wasn't raining too much, a little bit of drizzle, but trees were covering us most of the time, so it was very nice refresher before the evening. And now we are 23:23, very nice number, so 11:23 p.m. I will wrap up now and finish the blog post about the ticks and publish it together with this episode. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoy this podcast, whoever is longer. If you're new to it and you don't like this episode, you might try the other one and see if if you give it a shot, and maybe you will feel better about it, or get more familiar with my beautiful face. And if that works for you, I will be very happy to have you as a listener or watcher, because I want to provide value to people. And while some of the posts might be a little bit on the dull side and just an update, every now and then I do regular posts with some valuable information, and maybe not so inspirational or motivational, but those also happen from time to time. You might find very different content day to day. Sometimes it's just an update from my life. Sometimes it might be a recipe for a simple meal at home. Sometimes it might be just my thoughts and observations after seeing something and observing people doing things, or maybe technology. I will do a lot of stuff about technology as I am kind of bound to it by work, and especially on the security side and cybersecurity as well as information security in general. So I hope you enjoyed it. It's 15 minutes in, perfect time to wrap up. Stay tuned and see you tomorrow.